When it comes to men and women, is it all romantic relationships? I mean, is it all about the chemistry or could there be something more? We're going to dive into this conversation today. Now, I want to tell you where this video was birthed. I recently did a live stream talking about my current wonderful relationship and how I said we didn't have chemistry during our first meeting. And someone wrote a comment in that on that video that she said you actually did have chemistry, but you were missing something else. And I thought, what a great conversation to talk about chemistry. I'm going to give you 7 different types of chemistry to pay attention to in the future and see if this resonates with you. Now, to just give you a little bit of the backstory, over 4 months ago, I met someone fantastic. We actually first met on a dating app. We actually exchanged a couple messages over the course of, actually, it took about 8 months before we ever did finally connect. We had to go through 3 different apps to connect with someone. If you want to learn more about that, watch the previous live stream video, share more in detail. And we agreed that when we ended up agreeing to have a telephone call, and we ended up having a 3-hour phone call for our first phone call. It turns out we have mutual friends. It seems like we've crossed paths before. So there was a real connection during our first phone call. And the following day, we agreed to meet for coffee at a hotel marina, which was nice. It was overlooking the water, overlooking the marina. We ended up having breakfast, which felt a little more relaxed. And one of the things I said for our first meeting is, hey, let's just meet as friends without the pressure of dating, without the expectations that a man must climb to the highest room of the tallest tower, as oftentimes men are expected to glorify the first date. We wanted it to be more casual. Now, what ended up happening is we ended up having a 5-hour meeting. We got along on so many different levels. And again, I'm going to share those 7 types of levels of chemistry you might want to be prepared to make some notes for. But here's what ended up happening. I just recognized right off the bat that there wasn't she wasn't my type, per se. Now, as I reflect upon that, why she wasn't my type is she wasn't triggering my anxious attachment like in my previous relationships. And if you're not familiar with love attachment, I highly recommend reading Thais Gibson's book, Learning Love. And by the way, all the books I recommend during this video are listed below. I highly recommend reading this book to learn more about love attachment style. You see, oftentimes in the earliest stages of dating, when we feel this chemistry for another person, that is actually an insecure attachment style being triggered. And in this particular case, with my now beloved, it wasn't triggering my anxious attachment style. I wasn't triggering her insecurities, not that she has any, because she seems to operate more from a secure attachment style. But for whatever reason, neither one of us felt that deeper attraction, chemistry. You know, I'm using these words, but I'm going to go into it a little bit deeper in a second. So a couple days later, we end up getting on the phone. We shared with one another that we both feel neutral about one another. Like it wasn't like go past go and move forward. It was just a place of neutrality. And we end up speaking on the phone. And this was 2 days later. And we end up having over the course of the morning and evening, we end up having a 5-hour conversation, kind of flabbergasted because we checked all these other boxes for ourselves, but there wasn't that connection that we thought we would be. Now, as I said, she wasn't my type per se, although I look at myself now and go, what the heck was I thinking? And it seems like what I'm going to share is going to make more sense in a moment. And we ended up for the next 10 days having a series of conversations. Literally, we went from the apps to a phone call to a first meet to talking on the phone. And because we weren't pursuing a romantic relationship, we weren't fixated on attraction, entertainment, romance, and physical connection. We actually got to know each other at a heart-centered level. And during that period of time, we shared a bit about our lives. And it was interesting because we could feel ourselves forming a friendship. We were like, God, I really like you. She's like, I really like you too. And over the next 10 days, we were like, God, we like each other. We should become friends. Now, what ended up shifting, and this is what I think is critical for this conversation, is that I woke up the Thursday, 10 day, it was 11 days from the day we first met. And I just felt this strong pull towards her. I felt this strong attraction towards her. So it had been building up over a 10-day period of conversations. We probably accumulated 40 hours of conversations with each other because we just liked each other. We liked it. We were learning about each other's past. We were sharing our future desires. We were even saying how we'd help each other in the dating marketplace. But I woke up that morning going, God, there's just something that's gnawing on me about her. So we agreed to meet a second time. So the reason why I'm saying meet is that I believe that we should shift the dating dynamic to over expectations from a date and meet people twice before you actually go on a physical date. And that's what ended up happening to us. We ended up meeting a second time. We ended up having a little bit of connection, a little bit of chemistry, and we even kissed, which got things ignited. And then we planned a date thereafter. At least I planned the date thereafter. Now, again, this isn't conventional. You can do whatever feels right for you. I'm just sharing with you my story because I believe there's some value in learning through others' experiences. You know, we all have different perspectives on this thing called dating, mating, relating. I've shared for years my perspective on things, but now I'm sharing from a lived experience. And what I'm about to share might make total sense to you or might resonate with you. And that's what we're going to lean into today. So, as I said, we started off curious. We went into neutral. We built a friendship. But during this friendship, what was happening also is we were very intentional about sharing what our desires were in the sense of a romantic relationship. And we both desired an all-in relationship where it was built on teamwork. It was built on going all in. It was built on the desire to go the distance with someone. Why that's so critically important is without determining a person's intentions, you might be, a lot of people are just winging it. They're winging it out there. And when this person's just winging it, it's hard to determine if they're sincere about relationship. So I talked about chemistry, and we oftentimes focus chemistry on physical attraction. But what really that is are we experiencing biological chemistry? So number one, the first type of chemistry we're going to talk about today is that biological chemistry. Do we feel aroused by the other person? And we oftentimes mistake that, if we're not experiencing it, as something is wrong. But as I learned in this experience, what was happening wasn't a lack of a biological desire with her. It wasn't triggering an old pattern I had. You see, after doing what feels like, I think I've done over 3,000 hours of personal development workshops, trainings, therapy, that sort of thing, along with my over 20,000 hours of coaching, I began to heal my heart from all the pain I experienced in the 20 years, or the not my first 21 years of my life, but the pain I experienced for the next 21 years. And I learned to begin dismantling that over another 21-year period of time. Why I'm so sharing this is oftentimes we are being blocked to love, blocked from a biological perspective, because many of us have been hurt in our past. Maybe it was a past relationship that didn't go well. Maybe you found yourself in a narcissistic relationship. Maybe you found yourself in a relationship with an abusive person. Maybe you found yourself in a relationship with someone who had drug or alcohol abuse. Whatever it may be, you might have had adult traumas in your life that requires healing. If you haven't read the book, The Hoffman Process, I highly recommend reading this book to heal childhood wounds and adult traumas. Also, I would recommend learning discernment techniques. And by the way, that's what my coaching is all about. There's a link below to schedule a discovery call with me. If you act right now at the moment you're watching this video and mention this to me, I'm offering an amazing special on my coaching. So make sure you act now and reach out to me after finishing this video. And again, the link right there is the link, jonathanhasley.com/coaching. So First level of chemistry, and again, this is in no particular order, is biological chemistry. Okay. We oftentimes call that physical attraction, but really is, can we get aroused from this other person? Can we get aroused? Okay. Now, the other forms of chemistry include what I call emotional chemistry. Do we feel like we're connecting with this person on an emotional level? Do they seem to have emotional maturity? Do they seem to have some level of relationship skills? Do they seem like they have a heart? Or are they so wounded that they act very entitled, or they act like a doormat? Let me repeat that. Do they act entitled, or do they act like a doormat? That's the majority of people out there. They either act too entitled, or they're so deeply wounded that and I call it a doormat. Now, if I've offended anyone with this is just merely my observations. You can take it for what it's worth. But emotional chemistry, are you vibing on an emotional level? And what happened with my beloved, we were so vibing on an emotional level. Again, I was so hung up on the fact that I wasn't being triggered by my past that I put somewhat the brakes on, but I'm so grateful I put the brakes on, because it allowed to build that friendship piece during this period of time, during those hours of telephone conversations. And in that, we also determined that we had intellectual chemistry. Some people call this, this is oftentimes known as sapiosexual. Are you attracted to a person's mind? Are you attracted to their intellect? Are you attracted to their capacity to be curious, to want to dig deeper than just the surface? See, sadly today, most people are operating on a surface level. A lot of their messages are like this: how's your day going? Did you have a good day? I hope you had a good day. Tell me about your day. Let's just learn everything about your day. They're focused in the present tense in a very myopic way. See, if you want to build a deep friendship with someone, and by the way, please write this down, you have to do the following. How did we get here? Where are we and how do we feel? And lastly, where do we want to go? So the how did we get here is talking about our past experiences. If you're in your 50s, 60s, and even 70s, and you're meeting someone for the first time, you have a past. And by the way, that past makes up the bulk of your life. If we don't go digging into the past to learn about a person's life, where did they grow up? What was their childhood like? What's their relationship with their parents? What was their relationship with their parents? Do they have children? What's their relationship with their children? Did they have a divorce? By the way, if we don't go back in the past, it's like starting this book going 2/3 in, instead of starting from the introduction. And so within intellectual chemistry is the capacity, both on an intellectual and emotional level, is to talk about the past, talk about where we're at right now. How does it feel where we're at? And so most importantly, where do we want to go with our lives? See, most people are by the way, here's what oftentimes happens. There's that biological chemistry where people hyper-focus on attraction, entertainment, romance, and physical connection. And I say attraction from the physical attractiveness place. And then it becomes all about entertainment and romance. I've witnessed so many women have such grand expectations that a man is supposed to climb to the highest room of the tallest tower on the very first date. But we create such grand expectations instead of planting a seed in the ground, watering a little bit, give it a little bit of sunshine, water a little bit more, give it a little more sunshine, and let it sprout from there. And we do that through emotional, intellectual chemistry. The fourth kind of chemistry is what I call creative chemistry. These are for people that have good sense of humor. They have an artistic side to them. My friend Allison Armstrong calls this the Adam Sandler effect. Adam Sandler isn't necessarily the most handsome guy, but just his creative personality sets him apart. And when we can connect with someone on that creative humor perspective, and I think humor is so critically important, that piece of chemistry is so critically important for relationship success. Now, there's another type of chemistry that might seem a little obvious, but it's sexual chemistry. Let's face it, We've had, I'm sure, raise your hand if you've had an experience where you had an intense sexual attraction for someone, but you were misaligned in compatibility. You were misaligned in emotional maturity. You were misaligned in relationship skills. But boy, you wanted to have physical intimacy with them. I'm going to raise my hand. I've been there. And raise your hand by saying, Jonathan, I've been there too. Sexual chemistry is real. A little bit different than biological chemistry because it's driven by lust. Now, this is oftentimes what feels like the strongest form of chemistry, but it's actually the weakest of all chemistries. And while sexual connection is really important for those couples that it's, well, for those couples that certainly have a high libido, it's important. And we're talking about the over 50 crowd here. And I'm going to tell you something. People in their 50s, 60s, even 70s still have a very high libido. Raise your hand if you have a high libido. But having that sexual connection is rather important. The sixth type of chemistry I'm going to talk about, I call it protective chemistry. Now, this represents people, for the women, the type of men they're attracted to might be the Navy SEAL type, the physically protective type, or the financially protective type. When we talk about provider, protector, in the area of protection, that can be very intoxicating to a person if they're with that physical, strong type. Maybe it's a policeman, maybe it's a service person, maybe it's a construction worker, has that physical type, or that financially successful person. And for the men, protective chemistry might look like somebody who's a homemaker, somebody who's good at nurturing children, has that protective nature of protecting their cubs, so to speak. And that same protective nature, now I don't mean overprotection and overbearing, I just mean that nurturing type of protection. I put this in the form of protective chemistry. And then the seventh and last form of chemistry, I call it spiritual chemistry. Those are people that have a connection to something beyond themselves, a connection to the divinity. And honestly, I'm not even sure how to describe this very well. I just know it exists. People that have a desire beyond something beyond themselves on a spiritual level, and many people in the woo-woo community connect at a spiritual level and feel this level of spiritual chemistry. But when we look at all of this, someone might not be your type. But if you're vibing in some of these areas of chemistry, I call this now, finally, I'm going to call this energetic chemistry. If you're vibing in some of these areas, just like she and I were, we were neutral at first, but we were vibing on an energetic level, and it brought us closer and closer and closer together. And once we connected at that heart-centered level, we connected on an intellectual level, we connected on a creative level. We even talked about where we were financially in our lives to give us a sense of that safety. And we even had spiritual connection. That's what ignited the sexual chemistry. And I can tell you, folks, and this isn't meant to be brag, I'm in what feels like a highly aligned relationship where we're running the cylinders are running at 8 cylinders are running at a fine-tuned machine. And so coming back to this, here's the thing I want to say about chemistry. We oftentimes hyper focus on that biological chemistry, that physical attraction, as being the indicator of relationship success. And it's usually fueled by entertainment and romance and being physical with one another early. But what I can tell you, when you build a deep friendship for another person from a heart-centered place, and then ignite it with that physicality, if you will. A friend of mine calls it friendship on fire. When you ignite it with that fire, when you have that passion towards one another and you have that strong friendship and compatibility and alignment in your lifestyles and emotional maturity and relationship skills, you might find yourself in a relationship, what I oftentimes call a juicy, delicious, healthy, happy relationship. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating with you? If it is, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Post a comment below. I do my best to read them all in the first 24 hours. As always, if you find value in my videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Hit that notification bell as well. And if you want to connect with me and take advantage of my awesome special, act right now. Click that link below. Schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. From the time of this video, this special offer is only going to be good for 4 days. And I'm literally offering 1/3 additional coaching at a fraction of the normal price. So take advantage of this right now. Click the link below.